So, Mr. Martin McManus, you're very welcome to the podcast. Bit of context: I met you at the Legion Mary Young Adults Apologetics Conference. You gave a wonderful testimony there, and we were chatting a bit afterwards. So, thought it might be interesting for you to come on, share a bit of that, maybe, and talk through your journey, and share it with other people that might be in a similar state. So, you're very welcome.
Thanks, man. Yeah, it was good meeting you at the conference as well, and you gave that talk as well about the meaning of crisis at that conference as well. So happy to be here. It's great to have the opportunity just to
Awesome.
talk about my journey in the faith, I suppose.
Yeah, and like, how did you start off? So you were raised Catholic?
Yeah.
Longford?
Baptized Catholic. I'm from Longford. Parents are from Longford. Grandparents are from Longford. Great grandparents are from Longford. I'm kind of pretty much purebred Longford, So
100% Longford.
yeah. So baptized Catholic. Did all the sacraments, got the communion, confirmation. Kind of ticked all the boxes. But I'm born in the 80s, where there was still a good Catholic culture, good Catholic environment to a certain degree, and then that was sloping away during the 90s and then 2000s. So, but my experience was just very good upbringing, very good parents, salt of the earth, like to do anything for you. But my mother would be quite pious. She would pray quite a bit. I remember doing prayers when we were young as well, doing a few Hail Marys, things like that. But nothing like, we wouldn't be doing rosaries, or we would have been going to weekly mass. But it was important in our lives, the Catholic faith, but it wasn't that important. My father, very good man, but might not have taken the faith that seriously. Went through school like that. Didn't really get formed in the faith, didn't really have any catechesis, just kind of the Sunday homilies, bit of preparation for communion maybe in schools, preparation for confirmation. Just kind of standard for a lot of people, just kind of a lukewarmish sort of Catholicism is what I was brought up when. As I said, very good, like very happy childhood, playing in the back of the garden, playing football, climbing trees out in the countryside. Very good memories, but just a bland sort of Catholicism to a certain degree,
Yeah, and do you think that was kind of standard enough at the time, like in
it's like
a lot of places?
It was like, for my friends, is the same experience as well. Nobody was very enthusiastic amongst my friends. I couldn't identify, say, any Carlo Acutis or amongst my friends. That put it that way, And by the time I was 16, then it was just like, you've got your choice now. I was given didn't want to be going to Sunday masses by the time I was like 12, 13, but there was a kind of agreement. You have to go until you're 16, and then you get to decide. So I think by the time, like the week after I turned 16, I was like, I don't want this anymore, So then my parents were like, okay, like that's we kind of made that. My mother would have been the two of them would have been a bit disappointed that I wasn't following the faith, but they're like, okay, that's kind of the agreement. And I had a older sister who was quite rebellious to a certain degree, and she'd already drifted away, and they kind of thought, look, we don't want to force this on them, So they gave me my choice, and I kind of decided this isn't kind of for me, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And did that shape you in any way, in terms of, like, I know you studied psychology, and like, were you kind of looking for meaning, looking for understanding?
Yeah, for sure. Like, I was always interested in big abstract ideas. I was good in school, and I liked the more the scientific subjects. I liked history as well. I liked sort of grappling with ideas. I liked sort of looking at the sort of more looking at what justice was, or truth. Like, I remember when I was like trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my career, I was thinking, okay, I had a career guidance teacher, and she kind of encouraged psychology. She just mentioned it. And then I remember seeing things like, I remember one thing she showed me was like words saying CAT, but it wasn't exactly CAT, but you could make out cat in it. Like, there was lines missing of it, but it looked like cat. And I was like, well, how do we make true sense of the things, even when there's not, even when it's not all there. Like it kind of fascinated me to say, like, we can draw. We know that's cat, the word cat, but it's all the symbols aren't quite there. So how are we drawing meaning from, I suppose, the things that we're seeing, like, and understanding what's in front of us? So that fascinated me. So I thought psychology might be a good route to go down. I think if philosophy and theology was there at the time and it was maybe promoted more, I'd say that was the disciplines I would have been pretty even more interested in. But psychology was quite fascinating as well, and trying to figure out the human mind and how we come to know the things we know, like, so more, I suppose epistemology would be the kind of field I was very interested in, and that'd be philosophy. But psychology was more popular, more practical as well, and there was degree. It seemed it would lead somewhere as well, like, unlike philosophy.
Unlike my 3 arts degrees, unfortunately. I'm doing a third one now. Hopefully that goes better. Doctor philosophy.
It's not the most. People want to have more practical, but it's absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
Hopefully it leads to good work for yourself, man.
You don't do it for the money anyway.
No, certainly, yeah.
But so you went on to study psychology then?
Yeah.
As an undergrad?
I got enough points to study psychology in Maynooth initially, but there was competition for places to get into the second year of Maynooth. So I got into first year, but then I just went wild. I mean, 17-year-old. I was just turning 18 as I was going into college.
Wow.
Quite already had taken a taste for drink and enjoyed partying and things like that. And then kind of lacking in confidence as well. A country boy sort of coming up. Like, Maynooth's not the big city, but you're meeting a lot of lads that are maybe a bit more street savvy than you, put it that way. And got drawn into sort of all sorts of different things and the party lifestyle. So I would have, it was good in school. I liked the subjects, but then got drawn into sort of saying, "No, this is a waste of time," and a bit more rebellious when it came to academic studies. So I ended up doing a lot of drinking and other things as well. And then not doing so well in the first year then, and not getting enough points to get into the second year of my psychology degree. But I finished out my degree. I was doing 2 other subjects, ancient classics and sociology were my 2 other subjects. So I finished out the degree, got an arts degree, and then went back and studied psychology again. I did a postgraduate diploma and then a master's over in Nottingham Trent University. So I still was very interested in psychology and wanted to follow it up even after the initial arts degree. So.
Yeah, and so where, like, in terms of Catholicism, like, that probably wasn't on your map at all then, in some sense. Like, was that totally just far afield? Like, when did that come back into kind of rotation for you in some sense, or even religion as such, maybe?
The more just drifting away a lot of partying, not even being interested in big ideas anymore. Kind of just, no, it wasn't even on the radar, to be honest. I don't think I ever even considered going to mass. More and more, see, I was studying subjects as well, like modern psychology and modern sociology as well, which would have quite a critical ideas about Christianity in them. So while I wasn't the best student, especially in my undergraduate degree, I still was soaking in some of the sort of prejudices towards Christianity. So I think without knowing it, I was kind of being soaked in that environment. And I was more like a leaf in the wind, sort of just being blown whatever direction the sort of world was going. And that world at that, early 2000s was becoming a bit more drifting away from the faith. So that was kind of where I was drifting as well. So.
Totally, yeah. I mean, the kind of new atheist time and how that was probably bubbling up.
That's true. It's probably after my undergraduate degree, going over to England and studying then the master's in psychology. I did get more interested in the likes of Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins. I felt like there was no intellectual, because a lot of maybe what I was hearing was ridiculing Christianity. I felt there was no intellectual substance in Christianity. I felt the intellectuals belonged to the atheists. The atheists and agnostics were the intellectuals for me. And I was reading their books. It was actually Richard Dawkins. I discovered more so when I went to England and started studying psychology. I even quoted a reference to selfish gene in one of my papers as well. Although that wasn't one of the researchers saying, no, that's not great research. But I was fascinated by him and that idea. of atheism, and I thought he was a top intellect. So they
Yes.
were certainly influencing me. Yeah. Mhm.
Hmm. And so how? So then you go to England, and you're obviously you were saying about like kind of a bit of nihilism or a bit of like partying,
Mm.
like hedonism and that kind of. I don't know. Yeah. Did it start? When did that start to change for you in some sense? Like when did you start to be like I'm actually looking for something more,
It
than the
took a
secular kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, it took a good while. I lived in England for about 6 years, and I finished my master's, and then ended up doing a diploma in cognitive behavioral sort of therapy or skills and studies, and then working in addiction field, mental health field as well. Still wasn't crossed my radar for about 6 years, and I didn't leave England until I was about 26, 27. Ended up coming home for about 3 years working in addiction. I actually worked in a field as well where a lot of people in the field would be very anti-Christian as well. So I was still soaking myself in that. So another 3 years kind of bouncing around the place, maybe not as wild as I was in my early 20s, but still wild enough, but calming down a wee bit. And then by the time I left Ireland, I was kind of, I remember I was just talking to a friend about it. When I left Ireland, I remember a wedding I went to in Ireland as I was maybe 28, 29 before I went to New Zealand, which was just another year down the line. I was kind of talking to a priest, kind of ridiculing him at a wedding. Like, I was like, he was there for the
Really?
afters, and I just went up to him and was like, really, can you keep on doing this thing when you know it's just like a rubbish, it's a fairy tale, those sort of things. So I was getting more militant against the faith at that stage because I was reading more and more, say, like Sam Harris or Christopher
Mm,
Hitchens. Those sort of guys were really influenced me at that stage. And I thought this was just a fairy tale that people were believing in. And I
yeah.
understood. And I was thinking, my parents brought me up with some nice views on it, but that's kind of childish stuff, like, so
That's childish nonsense. That's
yeah.
so funny, man. Yeah, I
Mm,
definitely would have done that to a priest if I ever even encountered one. To be
mm,
honest, when I was younger, like I was so like because I was raised without religion as an atheist in a way, and that was kind of my default that it was a fairy tale, that it was all
mm.
nonsense. Science had disproved,
Yeah,
that
yeah,
Christians thought God was like a bearded man in the
yeah,
sky, and
yeah,
we had telescopes now, and he wasn't there, and
yeah.
so God is dead, kind of thing.
Yeah, that
Um,
phrase. Do you remember this? The phrase I think we used, the flying spaghetti monster. I think there was
Flying
some.
Spaghetti Monster.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, I
I
was
loved
big
that
on that,
quote.
man.
Yeah,
I loved that.
yeah,
Yeah, that
yeah.
was, and that really like because that's definitely Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, like that they think that that's what God is. Like God's
Mm,
like a Loch Ness monster kind of deal.
mm.
And I still hear people say that now, and I'm like, oh, that's so old school. That's like early 2000s, like
Yeah, yeah. But
atheism. I'm like,
so many
that's
people
that
bought into
vintage,
it.
like, yeah,
Yeah. I
really strange.
mm.
But so you were deep then in a sense of like you were very, critical. You've kind of deconstructed out of it, I suppose, in any way
Yeah, yeah. Because I was interested in
you have
social
before.
constructionism as well, and the theories around that as well. That all these concepts of God are just social constructions to kind of keep people in control, like, and all of that
Yeah,
sort of thing as well.
Marxist kind
Yeah,
of
yeah,
critique,
yeah.
the opium
Um,
of the masses.
Yeah, yeah, that sort of idea. Because I was studying
Mm.
psychology, you'd have the Freudian sort of stuff running through as well.
Childish wish fulfillment.
Yeah,
It's hilarious, man, because people make all these arguments to me now after I got baptized, and I'm like, yeah, that's Marx, and it's a little bit of Freud there. I'm
yeah,
like, yeah.
yeah, yeah,
I was like, yeah. It's like, I remember all these arguments.
yeah,
I was a vicious atheist. Like, it
yeah.
becomes a bit like you're kind of like, oh yeah, okay, you'll get through this.
You kind of get immune to it a bit. I mean, that's maybe it's like an inoculation. I mean, maybe that's what's kind of
Yeah, it just
helpful.
seems almost cliched or something.
Mm,
Like it's not particularly, or like I don't hear very original. It seems unoriginal, but maybe that's part of the penance for like, you know, making all those arguments when I was younger that you have to endure them,
yeah,
uh, getting them
there's a way
back
to.
the other way.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah,
it's kind of like Dante's Inferno, some ring.
yeah.
But so yeah, so you were going, and then I remember you talking about Jordan Peterson. Was he a kind of catalyst in that way of like post New Atheist, or was there something in between that
It's a
that
few
was
things.
bringing
Yeah.
you back to the faith?
Yeah, yeah. No, I went to New Zealand then, and I ended up doing some research in the Victoria University of Wellington. I was a research assistant trying to get some experience in a psychology department. And a few things happened in New Zealand then, and I was just like, okay. The first thing, and I mentioned to you before the podcast, was I was doing research on, there's a world value thing called a world value survey. and it has participants, about 1,000 to 2,000 participants in multiple countries around the world. It must be 150 countries around the world, filling out all these detailed questions, about 200 questions, all about sort of attitudes and values and things like that. And one of the questions that was asked was about freedom. Now, I can't remember the wording exactly, but it's something about how much freedom do you feel you have to make choices and control your life, or something along those lines, like, you know. And I was kind of more of a liberal at this stage. I wasn't. I did read Peter Boghossian's book, A Manual for Creating Atheists. I don't know if you ever came across that, but it's like the anti. I'm with the Legion of Mary. It's like the anti Legion of Mary handbook.
The opposite of the Legion of Atheism. Yeah.
So I was reading that at the time as well, and so this question about freedom was very important to me. Like, and I thought, well, I bought into a lot of liberalism, what they call classical liberalism, about you just give people as much freedom as possible, and people will be kind of happy, like, you know, that sort of basics. And there's a thing called, that's done by the Cato Institute. There's a thing called Freedom Index, of how free people are around the world. So you've got one question, loads of data from around the world. You could have up to, I don't know, 100,000 people in this data set. And then you've got the freedom index as well. And you would expect this freedom index would correlate with people's experience of how free they actually feel, like, you know. So you've got this personal freedom index, which is the Cato index, and that talks about like freedom of speech, freedom of, say, like freedom of press, but also things like same-sex marriage and things like that, and also abortion. I think even abortion, so-called abortion rights, were in there. So I think all those countries that have that high level of freedom index must feel more free. Like, you know, there must be a really strong correlation between it, because that's my idea of what will bring that sort of sense of freedom. And I only saw there was a tiny correlation. It was kind of a very weak, but it was like 0.19. And I think when it comes to correlations, 0.3 is considered a weak correlation. Anything underneath that is considered not really, there's no real relationship between the figures. So that kind of perplexed me. I was thinking, well, hold up. If this isn't actually leading to people to feel more free, well, what does lead to freedom then? Like, you know, or a sense of freedom as well. So started exploring that, kind of burst the bubble to a certain degree, because I was following the data. And then I was like, okay, how do I make sense of that? If that's what the data is telling me, how am I going to grapple with it then? And then shortly after that, I was working in mental health services, and I met lots of Protestants, the service users themselves, who had just been released from psychiatric wards, and they had a real devotion to Christ, like, as their rock, like, you know. And I was kind of ridiculing them. I was still kind of ridiculing them, and I was all about evolution, theistic or atheistic evolutionary psychology, and that would explain everything, like, you know. But they were telling me, and I was the one leading the class. Like, I was meant to be the one leading the mental health workshop, and these patients that were just released from a psych ward were telling me, well, no, you're wrong about Christianity. And I was like,
oh, you were trying to convert them to evolutionary psychology.
Yeah, I was trying to take away, I was trying to take away the rock as well. Like, I was trying to take away.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, just give up on that sort of Christian stuff. It's just fairy tales. You need more substance, like, you know. So then I met them, and like, whoa, maybe that's interesting. They all seem to still hold on to that despite all their suffering, and some of them have been through dreadful suffering. Like, some of the stories I heard were atrocious, like, you know. So they held on to Christian beliefs, and then around the same time, I fell across Jordan Peterson, and I do.
Okay, I might pause you there before we go. Jordan Peterson, because there's a couple of interesting things he said in terms of the freedom thing, first of all, which is that I think there's a kind of version of freedom that we have in the modern liberal democracies, or whatever you want to call them. Really, that was something I had as an atheist as well, this kind of freedom from reality. DC Schindler calls it freedom from reality rather than freedom for reality. So essentially, like, your freedom is freedom from constraints, like all constraints, basically. We need more rights, less responsibilities. If you have all of the rights, then you're completely free. And it's just like removing constraints from people in any shape and form, but then that doesn't actually result in feeling better, is what I'm hearing you saying in some sense. Like that doesn't, it's not the same thing as the experience of being free.
And the data plays that out. I mean,
Mm.
you look at this, it's, as I said, if that was true, you would expect to see a huge correlation between people's sense of freedom, their personal sense of freedom to be able to control and direct their life, and then those countries that have given us all these so-called rights as well, that, without the responsibilities, you would, like the likes of Germany and Netherlands, you would expect those people in Germany, say like for the more liberal countries in Europe, you would expect those people to feel really free, but they don't.
Yes.
The data shows it. And the other thing with freedom as well, the correlation between the largest correlation between for happiness is your sense of freedom. Across that data set, it's hugely influential in our sense of life satisfaction. That's the question that's asked. And all other correlates, like your health or things like that, are not. There's some correlation, but not very far weaker. So that's what people want. They want happiness, and it's very linked to a sense of freedom.
Yeah, there's a kind of naive. I mean, I had it really bad myself in some sense. I don't know if it's just a general human thing, or I kind of adopted it maybe as an atheist in some sense. Like that freedom is absence of any authority or any kind of constraints on your behavior, on your rules, on your identity. Like any kind of authority or hierarchy even is a kind of imposition on your implicit freedom. It's like you're born with this kind of, I don't know, perfect orb of freedom, and any kind of constraints that are put on that are kind of whittling it down. But really, actually, I think, I mean, the religious view of freedom is much more like being ordered to reality, in a sense, being ordered to the cosmos, and being, I suppose, capable of freedom is more like harmony, I would say, inner harmony and harmony with kind of the order of reality, rather than just this kind of ability to choose whatever you want without any consequences at any time. Like, it's a really almost theological difference, I think, and you see it like in politics, in our whole culture. That version of freedom is just like, it's, and people burn out. I suppose me and you, I think, are examples of that, like where we kind of tried to live that version of freedom to an extent and didn't feel very free at the end of it.
I think we're trying to discover, like, just even with colleagues today, or it was a couple of days ago, talking about that freedom we had when we were young, running through the countryside, and just been feeling very, very, very much at peace and very happy. And we're trying to grasp at that again. We're trying to rediscover that. Like, how do we get back there? And it feels like all these rules and impositions that have been thrown on us when we got a bit older, we need to cast them all off and just be kind of more hippie-ish almost, like, and
live in the moment,
all of that sort of stuff. And there's something true in that, because the relationship we should have with God is very childlike. It's very much, we are free, and we should remember that we have God, our loving Father in heaven, who created the whole universe and loves you infinitely. That, you have discovered a sort of childlike freedom again in that. And I think there's a sense where we're all looking for that again, like,
Yeah, and unless you become like little children, you'll never have the kingdom of heaven. But it's interesting that it comes from serving God. Like, in some sense, it's like once you're a servant of God, then you get the freedom. But if you try and serve yourself, you actually end up in chains. Like, it's, again, the kind of Dante's Inferno. Like, when you pursue your own will, you end up stuck in all these binds and, snares. But whereas you give up your will to God, and you actually get freedom and joy and love.
Yeah, and
it's a weird paradox.
It is. It's very strange, like, to... there's a kind of, I don't know if you remember Pearl Jam. I used to be a big fan of them back in the early 90s. And there's a song about a wish list. There's a song, and it's something like, I wish I was a sacrifice and somehow still lived on. So I wish I was able to sacrifice my will, but still live on in a sort of sense. Yeah. And I think there's a yearning for that as well, like, But yeah, and the slavery thing as well. Like, it's the whole thing with, we in the Legion, we devote ourselves to Our Lady, but also we talk about being slaves to Our Lady, and also in that sense we're slaves to God as well. And by giving up your will, you actually become more free. You're saying,
man, that's so, because there's that the religious idea of like the great chain of being, that there's this ordering, from God, the angels, to human beings, to animals, to plant life, and that in some sense accepting your role in
Mm,
that is a way to almost transcend it. It's like when you fight against that, you actually end up, in that opposition. But when
mm.
you embrace the natural order of things, you're liberated in some sense.
Yeah, I think as you said, it's freedom for reality and maybe in
Mm.
reality as well, rather than kicking back against reality all the time. And I think you'll end up in more change rather than kind of accepting that this is reality. And reality is beautiful. It's atrocious at times,
It's
and there's so
good.
much suffering in the world. And I was working in mental health and addiction for years and homelessness, and you see a lot of it, and it could get you very much. I want to change this reality, but there is a bigger reality, and I think that's where that at least that we can transcend that suffering. And I think it's very, very difficult if you don't have God. It's such a it can become so bleak, So
Yeah, yeah, and that it can be kind of fruitless trying to change those things without it. I mean, the number one treatment for addiction is religious conversion.
mm,
Like
mm.
AA, in a sense, is a kind of religious conversion. You have to give up your power or your will to a higher power, because your will isn't, it's not good. It's causing you problems.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to be open to transformation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, we throw loads of money at all sorts, and that's one thing I experienced as well, working in the addiction and mental health field as well. We had lots of services and throwing lots of different ideas, but I didn't see much fruit from the work I was doing, especially when I wasn't taking a Christian
Okay.
perspective on things as
That's
well.
interesting.
But
Do you think that? Yeah. Oh, sorry. I cut
no, I was
across you
just
there.
going to say the Jordan Peterson stuff was in and around that in and around that time. That was when I kind of thought, oh, maybe there's something in Christianity, because he was an intellectual. Because he was like, I was like, oh well, like they're all dumbasses. These Christians. Like, that was the way I would think. Like, and this guy
Me too.
actually is he's smart, and I know he's smart because he's very articulate and he's very able to grapple with ideas, and he's very well read, and he's not stupid. He seems to have a lot of common sense as well. He's not just all up in sort of just detached from the world as well. And he seemed to care as well. That's one thing I really liked about Jordan Peterson. Still liked about him. I don't follow him as much today as I did then, but I remember hearing his interviews, and he was actually concerned about young men. He really was. He broke down one time. I remember he had an interview in England, and he actually broke down crying, saying like, "I'm really these young men are coming to me." And I was like, "Okay, he really cares." And I was like, "Oh, that's actually really good as well." So.
Yeah, he kind of exemplified what he was talking about in a way, like that
Mm,
courage and that care, and like, taking on the responsibility of actually, trying to uplift people and
yeah.
make things better. It felt, but also the intellectual aspect, as you pointed out, like he was the first adult I ever heard defend Christianity in my entire life.
Wow. Okay.
Like
Yeah.
that ever actually put forward a defense of it. Maybe the other ones did, and I just didn't listen. But
Mm,
like, he was the first one that I ever went, "Oh, okay.
yeah. Yeah.
Maybe he's taking this seriously. Maybe I should take it more seriously." And that's bad, because I was like 23 or whatever. I'd never heard any adult
Mm.
defend the West or defend Christianity
Okay. Yeah. I'm trying to think
in
who
my
I
whole life.
did. If I did hear, yeah, it might be. That's the first one that really struck me. Anyway, that I was like, oh wow,
Yeah.
he's seems to really standing up for Christianity and Western values as well. So and yeah, take responsibility. I like that. Just clean your room instead of trying to fix the
Mm,
world around you all the time and getting involved in all these
yeah.
social causes. Take some time to fix yourself, and then
Which
go
is his
out and see what
exact
you can do.
opposite. Yeah.
So yeah,
Because that's really a big part of my problem, was that external focus all the time of
yeah,
like,
mm,
you're almost taught to focus on like politics and social issues before you actually even had like a functional adult identity in any
mm,
sense. It was like, it was very, even in my degree, which maybe wasn't an activist degree, but it was just kind of in the air in some sense.
mm,
I don't
mm,
know, of like, it was about these big issues, these big social issues, and your own character and your own like life somehow didn't matter in that. You could be completely in bits, and you were right to criticize, the most powerful people in society or other things. It was a very,
yeah,
um Peterson really put that in perspective. That was like, you're in this equation here. If you're messed up, your judgments are going to be, it's
yeah,
going to be
yeah.
off.
Yeah, what are
If
you
you're in
giving?
chaos, you're not.
What are you giving back?
Mhm.
Like, what are you doing like to change these things? Like
Yeah.
that sort of way.
Why are you judging the whole of history,
Mm.
all of your ancestors who were way better than, like most of us. Yeah, wake up call, man.
Yeah. That for me that was, and then it was like, okay, there's something in this Christianity thing, and then kind of maybe it's YouTube algorithms. Once you start clicking on this stuff, you get more of it, and you're like, oh, okay, this isn't so bad. This seems like that's another person. I suppose I was reading Dostoevsky and Solzhenitsyn around this time as well, so they were kind of highlighting the dangers of drifting from the faith as well, and that was helpful as well. Maybe I think I read them before I listened to Jordan Peterson, at least some of their writings, and then he kind of was very big into them as well. So I got more interested in those ideas as well. And then starting, well, which one of these if Christianity has merits, and it seems to be, which one of them is true? There must be one that's is more reasonable than the other one. So started going to Pentecostal services in New Zealand. Sorry, went to a Baptist service. Then went to I went to something else. Oh, Anglicans as well. So I got to meet a lot of Christians. Like, and I had really good experiences. Like, although I never took to the charismatic stuff, but I could understand that some people's draw, but it wasn't for me. And nice people. They were very friendly. The Anglican, like one of the Anglicans. I got on really well with the Anglican pastor, and he gave me a book at the end, and he gave me a hug at the end. He was like, it was really nice meeting you. I was like, these are good guys. And then I think it was a procession of the cross between the different churches in a town called Lower Hutt in near Wellington in New Zealand, and they went with the cross from different churches. It's probably like an ecumenical thing. And they ended up in the Catholic Church. The last church they ended up in the Catholic Church. And maybe at that stage, like, oh, maybe I should try this out again. Like,
Yeah, remember that old thing? That old Catholicism that I gave up.
Yeah. It's like, oh, I'm back here. Okay, this is a bit different. And then moved home from New Zealand, and then kind of fell into going back to the Mass. Now, I didn't know that much about it. I still hadn't studied much about Christianity in terms of it. I didn't know anything about the catechism. And I was still trying to figure out a lot of stuff. So, but I kind of thought, oh, look, I'm kind of back in Ireland. Why not Catholicism? Why not Sunday Masses? And I wouldn't have, I don't think I even went to confession and things like that. Like, that wouldn't have been even on my radar yet. And then, but I was getting more involved in things. And then there was pro-life movement. And I had come to the conclusion that, we should be trying to defend the lives of the unborn. Even though at the same time when I was campaigning with an old woman, and she campaigned for against the same so-called same-sex marriage, and I was like, oh, but I think that's okay still, So it's a little bit mixed up in the way I was thinking about things.
Fair.
But I was out campaigning, and then I met some radical traditionalists, a family that seemed to know their stuff, knew a lot about. Seem to know a lot about the church and about the problems in the church. Seem to have some solutions as well, and they invited me to give me a book about sort of some of their arguments against, say, like Vatican II or things like that. And then I read that. Oh, this seems to make sense. And it points. It says these are all the problems are stemming from Vatican II and from heretical sort of documents that have come out of the church. And then I read that, and then the abortion referendum happened, and we had such a terrible result. And I remember the homily the day after by the local priest, and I really like this priest. And now I think he's good, but at the time there was nothing much said about it. And we'd been out campaigning, for like a good few months, and it felt a bit like there was a match on in the championship, and he mentioned that, but there wasn't much mention of the result. Okay. And that made me think, oh, maybe there is something in this whole, maybe they're right. Maybe the church has collapsed in on itself, and maybe I should be.
Did you feel like they were going soft on it in a way? That they weren't really taking it on?
Yeah, like I had that idea.
Culture war kind of space.
Yeah, I thought they should have got more involved. But then again, I look at it and think if they did get more, would have been crucified as well, saying, look, the church again is trying to interfere here. And, I can see why they didn't get too involved. But anyway, I was disappointed at the end of it. And
was that 2018?
2018, yeah. So that's 7 years ago. And then I started going to the Latin masses, and with a group that was not just the SSPX. I think you might be familiar with the SSPX.
I had a guy, the last Dom from the Logos Project, grew up in the SSPX.
Okay,
He was telling me about it, so I
yeah.
hadn't heard about them. But he, similar to yourself, I think, kind of after learning about some of it, was like, okay, yeah, this doesn't add up.
Well, I was in a fringe group even more radical than the SSVX. Like it was proper schism.
In Ireland.
In Ireland, yeah. There's a group in Ireland.
And so there's schismatic Catholics that are like,
there's
rejecting Vatican II.
Yeah, rejecting Vatican II, saying Vatican II teaches heresy, and that there's been various heresies in other documents throughout the last 60 years as well. And that if you kind of look back on documents previous to Vatican II, go 18th, 19th century, on liberalism and things like that, and it seems when you read it, you think, oh wow, this seems to make sense. It's all based on a lot of writings of Archbishop Lefebvre, and then there's a split in the SSPX as well about who's really following Archbishop Lefebvre and what sort of position he took. So you've got different fringes within it as well. So I was involved in that. I read it, consumed a lot of the writing, and I was involved in that for about 5 years. Just kind of thinking that the solution, we must go back just to pre-Vatican II. The church is kind of, there was sedevacantists amongst us, but there wasn't many amongst us. There was a few that had said that the Pope isn't even the Pope, so that's sort of, and it's kind of, would use the phrases like the counterfeit church or the conciliar church or phrases like this. Mm-hmm. So I thought it made sense at the time, but then about 3 years ago now, I started digging into things a bit more. I don't know what it was. Maybe there was friction in the groups and I could see all these splits. And I thought, there's something up here. This isn't quite right. And then came across, there's a man, he writes The True Pope, John Salsa. I came across his writing. He was very good in explaining, because he was with the SSPX but moved away from them, and he explained some of the errors of the SSPX and defended Vatican II. And then also came across the Michael Lofton as well, who was very influential as well for explaining the Magisterium and the Catholics' relationship with the Magisterium and what that's meant to look like, So.
And what was it about the Magisterium, I suppose, that made that change for you, in a sense, that was kind of made you happy enough to come back to the mainline church, I suppose?
The main thing was the indefectibility. That if the church fails in its mission to direct people to heaven, then there's no true church. If the church that Christ has founded is now poisoning people, if it's poisoning people by telling them they have to believe this document that contains heresy, or they have to go to this mass which is poisonous to your soul, well, if that's what the church is saying, and it's spread that universally, well, then it's poisoning the faithful. And if the Church of God is poisoning the faithful, then there is no Church of God, because it's defected from itself. So Christ, it was all sort of a bit of a lie. Maybe the Protestants could have been right, but I'd already come to the conclusion that there had to be a visible hierarchical church from Scripture. It kind of indicates that, and from tradition as well. So if it had defected from itself, then we were in a spot of bother, put it like that.
We were in a bit of trouble. That's so interesting, because I thought that myself, obviously having to decide between the branches, because I was like, okay, I'm a Christian, I accept the Christian, I understand the metaphysics now, I'm on board with that. I'm on board with the ethics, I get Christ, I get why he's ultimate, I'm into that. But now it's like C.S. Lewis said, he's like, Christianity is the hallway and you have to pick one of the rooms. And I was like, which room am I going to pick? I was like, I don't know, as an Irish person, I was like, I don't know if I can be a Protestant. My dad's from Belfast. It kind of just wouldn't be, you know what I mean? I think he'd rather I do a lot of things other than that. I don't know. But if I thought it was the truth, I would have done it. That was it. But I kind of recognized, once you have one Protestant Reformation, you'll have another one in some sense. It's like you'll keep, it's impossible to keep it together once you split off. And you do that, it's like, because they just have an argument with each other, they split off, and then you end up with 30,000 denominations in some sense. It's I got why that was a bad idea, but then I was also like, well, I don't know. The Catholic Church then is the true church, and I had to
Mm.
look into the schisms between them and Eastern Orthodox. And I was
Mm.
very between Eastern Orthodox and Catholicism.
Yeah.
Um, Eastern Orthodox as well, like Jonathan Pajot and these guys. I was quite into their work.
Okay.
But then with Eastern
I never
Orthodox,
did that. I never really
yeah,
looked into it. I think maybe because I
I
came
did
across
get
Michael
very,
Lofton and he
yeah.
gave such good arguments against it, that I
Mm.
never really entertained it. Like, so.
Yeah, I definitely thought about it, but it was, yeah, that idea of the Magisterium as well, of having an interpretive body, I suppose, that's necessary to kind of unpack the revelation, and even
Mm.
that like doctrine can develop.
Yeah.
Henry Newman's idea of like it's the acorn becoming the oak in some
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
It's like
Mm.
it's not adding stuff to it; it's unpacking
Yeah.
what happened across
Mm.
time, and that's necessary and perfectly valid and obvious. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
it means it's not a static religion in a way. It's capable of the fullness of the truth.
Yeah, yeah, and I think you spoke about the writing. You've read some of Frank Duff's writing, the founder of the Legion of Mary, and he unpacks
Yeah,
that as well. Like he says, like
really.
the Catholic Church, the Catholic faith is the only thing that's been able to stand up to all of the different ideas that have come its way down through 2,000 years, all the different challenges, all the different modern ideas and modern challenges that have come. The Catholic Church still stays strong against it. Like what other
Yeah,
institution has done that? Like there hasn't.
none.
It stayed
There isn't
strong,
one.
so, and it's kept it's that, but the understanding of doctrine has developed, and we've come to
Mm.
know our faith even more so, and that's like as you said, it's like an organic body. It's like the mystical body growing all the time.
Yeah.
So,
And it's a
um,
kind of bulwark as well against the like whatever trend
mm,
comes up. It's like there's a weird that because that's the modern thing, isn't it? Like reform everything, rebel against everything, change it, make it new. It's like you come to that and it's like no, the most important thing's already happened.
mm,
Actually, we're trying to live up to that.
mm.
So we can't just go and add whatever the latest thing is because it wasn't there in the most important thing that ever happened. Like it screens that out to an extent.
Yeah, yeah. I think it keeps that. It keeps the doctrine and the dogmas and the teachings, and the church is able to adapt as well, not
Yes, it
compromise, but
does both.
adapt. It does both. It's
And
able to do
grow
both. Like,
fully.
and you're able to be, you're able to be normal as well in your own time. You're meant to be Catholic in these particular times. You're not meant to be weird. Even though I
Mm,
know you might be. I was just chatting to someone before this podcast about how we could appear to be like the rad trads can appear like to some really odd characters. I mean, there's odd characters in the church all the time, but I mean, there's particularly maybe just a quite high percentage amongst the rad trads. And that was kind of like, you don't have to be weird. You can be very
mm,
normal. And I don't mean average. Like you don't have to be the average Catholic, but you can be very normal, like the likes of Carlo Acutis, like I think, or Saint
yeah.
Pier Giorgio Frassati, climbing mountains, smoking a pipe, having a crack with his friends, Carlo Acutis with computers, just being
Mm,
a man of people of our times, while also being
yes.
devoted to God and being like that being the center of our lives.
It's such a good point, man.
Mm,
To not because it was something that I would have associated the Catholic Church with like very dogmatic, very like rules based. In my head, it was like the evil empire in Star Wars.
mm,
Like it
mm.
was like
Yeah, yeah.
that kind of like
I'm sure
Darth
there's.
Vader
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
type image. Like, and
yeah,
then the dogma is like your back's nearly broken. There's so many rules. You're just kind of
yeah,
scurrying
yeah,
around.
yeah.
But my understanding of it's changed so much in a sense where it's like even the Jews have this idea of like love the law because it's like the law is there to help you
Mm,
become like Christ. Like he's the goal in a sense, you want to be like him. And it's like,
mm,
and this is all aimed to get you there. Like, so it's like,
mm.
if your goal is the same as that, it's like, you don't have to worry about the dogma or any of that stuff. It's like, you're in alignment with it. Like it's the same goal.
Yeah,
It doesn't
yeah.
have to be this horrifying, like, oh no, my freedom. It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
no,
yeah.
it's
What if I
actually,
step out
it's
one?
helping you. Like,
Yeah, if I step out of place one time, that's going to be struck with lightning. Like that sort of.
you're gonna just blow up
That's
or
yeah.
something. Like,
That's sort
it's
of.
way more forgiving, way more
Mm,
understanding, way more practical as well, in a sense of like it's built in. Like there's a very sensible, even when I'm doing like, going to confession and like keeping track of like, sins and working on that kind of moral
mm,
development. It's it makes a lot of sense. Like, you have this mechanism in a sense that's like the mass keeps there, and then you got to confess to go and take, the Eucharist, and in that way you're progressing all the time. It's like, almost you need like Catholic PTs or something, I think, to explain this to people, but it makes so much sense now to me. Whereas before I was like,
well, it kind of crosses
it's
over,
so
like
opaque.
in counseling and psychotherapy as well. Like we often used scales to measure different aspects of your life, of how you were doing, like, and you'd check in with someone, like you'd be doing counseling or therapy for a year with some people, like, and you'd be in maybe once a week, maybe then once every fortnight, once a month, and you're kind of reminded of just check in with yourself, see where things are at, like, and I remember adapting some of this stuff myself, saying, all right, where am I at with my fitness, where I am at with my eating, my nutrition, all of these sort of, and we do it kind of naturally. We kind of just kind of, all right, I need them a bit off keel there. So what we're doing is checking in with our soul, like, and our spirit. All right, that was all a bit off there. We can improve that, like, and then, okay, let's crack on with these other things in my life. And I think that's where, like, I think Pope Francis encourages, all the Jesuits encourage it, is that examination of conscience as well. We do need to do it just to see what have I done right today and what have I done wrong. And I think that's absolutely, there's nothing unnatural about that, like, so
yeah, and so necessary, man. It's such a counterweight to the kind of self-improvement culture that can be so toxic, of trying to maximize everything and like constant like grind more, get up earlier, work harder. Like, it's like, no, that's not actually the ideal. Like, it's the fruits of the Holy Spirit, love, joy, peace, wisdom. Like,
growing,
that's the evidence that's working.
Growing in love, like, and that's something that took me a while to figure out, because I was very interested I was very much focused on those sort of and we're still working on things, but very much focused on the sort of plan and getting things in order and things like that. And also then everything's very, very rigid in a certain way. I suppose in a way that's what attracted me towards the rad trads, and Pope Francis points that out as well. There is something there that's quite a bit off, like, so you're kind of beginning to realize it's the doctrine and all of that stuff is vital to the church as well, but also it's the kind of growing in a really loving relationship with God and understanding. And that's where Saint Teresa of Lisieux is so great, her spirituality, about constantly referring, like, just throwing ourselves into the arms of God, and just really being a little child, like, and I think that's what we all need to learn, like, we're all working on it, like, to say, okay, he loves me infinitely. And Pope Francis was really good in that. I really hated him for a long time when I was with the rad trads.
I can imagine with the rad trads. That'd be I mean, I still wasn't a Catholic. I was only, he died 2 days after I became Catholic.
Oh wow, right.
So I didn't have
in a way he helped me, because he was just I remember going to youth 2000 or those sort of events, and listen to his hymn. He just constantly remind people you're loved, you're infinitely loved, like, and then I think you just need to hear that, like, and then the good God is your best friend, like,
Yeah, and that the more you do the kind of, because I remember people saying that to me, like, oh, confession's all about shame or something like that, and I was like, not really. Like, you're clearing away the dust so you can experience more of that love. It's like the point of the purification is so you actually get, a better relationship with God, a better connection, and the reason that it's because of our own choices that we go the other way. So it's like, by choosing again to, confess and be honest and get absolution, and you then can reconnect, and it's like, it keeps you, I mean, I don't know if you I can feel grace in some sense, but I definitely at times kind of have a sense of being like, yes, I'm experiencing more grace, I think, and that's real, like that's I mean, it's better than any drug I've ever done, to be honest with you.
No, it's same as it's just ecstatic. It's so peaceful. God seems to give us that bit of milk as well. He'll give us the meat as well, and he'll give us dry spells and all of that sort of stuff. But he will give us the sweet milk as well, of consolations as well, and to really feel his love at times throughout your whole body, like, and that sort of draws you closer to him. And then you'll withdraw at some stage and say, okay, I'm going to test you here. That's okay.
You're going out into the desert for a while. Good luck.
So be it. Like, he'll do it. He knows exactly what's needed. Like a good coach. He'll push you when it's needed, and he'll withdraw. He'll kind of take it easy on you when it's needed. Like, So.
Yeah. And how did the Legion of Mary come into this as well for you? Like as you kind of went on, when did you rejoin the Legion?
So I tested out the Legion when I was with the Rad Trad group, but they were promoting the ordinary rites, so I said, oh, well, I couldn't really do that. So that was like 5 years ago, and I read some of Frank Duff's writing at the time. I thought it was very good, especially about encouraging high ideals. He's got a
Hmm.
book called The Spirit of the Legion of Mary, which talks about out loving the world, and use very strong terms to say push yourself on, kind of like Jordan Peterson to a certain degree, but
Hmm.
with Frank Duff was Catholic, so he had a real Catholic emphasis on how to go about this as well. So that appealed to me, but I didn't get into it at the time. And then about 3 years ago, when I did come back, I came back to the church because I was in a schismatic group. I came back to the church, and then I started, well, how could maybe I should get involved in something, and then came across the Legion of Mary in Longford, and immediately took to it. I think because I had read some of Frank Duff's writing, and I started devouring the handbook and some more of Frank Duff's writing, and also stuff about the great legionaries that have been there before, like Edel Quinn and Alfie Lamb, and then also Father Aidan McGrath and the work that he did in communist China is absolutely amazing. And I don't know, there's very few people that probably know about that in Ireland, about how the
Oh.
Legion of Mary was considered public enemy #1 by the communists in China during the communist takeover.
So funny, man. Coming from Dublin, like here's the number one enemy of the Chinese Communist Party. Like,
Yeah. They wanted to wipe it out completely because they could see it was a real
yeah.
threat to their goal of sort of dominating people and enchaining people. And they kind of talk about being a part of the imperialist sort of regime and things like that. But there was so much good that was done by the Legion in China, and that inspired me as well. And so about that's 2.5 years ago, maybe I joined the Legion, and then started getting more and more involved in it. Started, did a consecration to Our Lady, read more of St. Louis Marie de Montfort's work about slavery, as we were talking slavery to Our Lady and to the will of God, and that sort of thing. That was very powerful. And then going out and meeting people and talking about the faith. Now that's daunting. Going out and actually knocking on doors. You're kind of like the Catholic Jehovah Witnesses,
Yeah.
and we do get mistaken for them on the streets sometimes. We have to say, no, we're Catholic, we're Catholic.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's been really great just to have that weekly meetings, and we have prayers that we're asked to do daily, like the Rosary, and then we have our 2 hours work that we do at least 2 hours work that we do each week. I do it one evening a week, maybe visiting nursing homes, going out and knocking on doors, chatting to people about the church, what they think of the church, about the faith, and also then meeting people on the streets as well and giving out miraculous medals and meeting people where they're at. I mean, that's the big thing. I think the Legion really focuses on being very gentle, like Our Lady, but also being firm in the faith. You won't meet, like you meet Legion of Mary members, they're strong in their faith generally, the vast majority of them. But they also try to combine that gentleness of Our Lady and work with people where they're at. Like, see what they think. Let them rant if they want to give out about the church and what's been happening in the church and what some churchmen have done. Well, so be it. Like, they're a bit. One of the things Frank Duff says is maybe they're very cynical, but they used to be an idealist. Maybe they were disappointed with what they held up. They wanted beauty and goodness and truth to be in the world, and then they
Mm.
experienced that some men really let them down, like, or men or women, whoever it might be, that would call themselves Catholic, let them down, and that really shook them sometimes. And maybe we should give them a chance to sort of rediscover that idealism that may be buried there. And I think that's sometimes you do discover that once you let people just talk,
Yeah.
you might discover that actually they're just very, very disappointed. Not all now,
Yeah.
but there is some
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, and that you have to kind of embody that love as well. It's not
Mm.
just about arguments or about, who's got the best ideas or whatever. It's in some sense you have to show up as that merciful,
Yeah.
forgiving, loving, spirit. And that can be difficult as well, I suppose, if people are giving you abuse. For
Yeah.
me, I'm like, I gave so much abuse bet I'm kind of like, you know what I mean? I've definitely said worse than most.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
kind of like,
yeah,
you call that blasphemy? That's underachieving. Like,
yeah.
I could do.
I'll give you a funny one, man. There was one, I remember my brother ringing me. I was in New Zealand at the time, and he rang me, and he was reading the Bible at the time. And I started mocking him about it, like, because I said something like, you'll find more, you'll find more value in the Lord of the Rings books, like, you know. But little did I know that a lot of the stuff running through the Lord of the Rings is very Christian as well. You know, I was like, oh, like, on reflection, I'm like, oh, wow. Actually, the good God was always drawing me back to Christian values and principles all the
Yeah, the
time,
token.
even
It
though I
was
didn't know it.
essentially a Catholic myth.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's so funny, man.
yeah.
Amazing. Yeah. Well, any final message for people that you'd like to leave them with, or um, things you'd like people to think about or read, or actions
Yeah,
based on your own experience?
yeah. Well, I'm big on the Legion of Mary now. I mean, it used to be big years ago. It used to be very, very many people were in it years ago. But there is some sort of green shoots happening here and there across the country as well, with younger members as well. Just a lot of the people that are there for years are the stalwarts, and they've kind of kept it going. But we have we do try to recruit more and more people into it. So if there's people out there that want to just have something to get involved in, and one of the things that Vatican II certainly emphasizes, and I've discovered by reading the documents, is about the lay apostolate, and we have it's not just something, it's a duty to try to share your faith as well. That's kind of written in the documents as well. So I'd encourage everybody to kind of, if they have this treasure and they've found this this treasure that they could share, well, do share it, like, you know. And I want and do it in an
Mm.
organized way. I suppose that's the thing that we try to emphasize in the Legion as well, that we have a system there that works. There's been marvelous things happening with the Legion throughout many countries, and still are happening. And so we kind of direct people that way, all under the leadership of Our Lady. So I don't think you can go wrong there. So that's something I would emphasize, and give people, yeah, even if people are giving you abuse, just give them a chance, because I was one of them, and I think May and you were one of them as well. You might find it,
Definitely.
be charitable to them. I think you said it. That's the main thing. Just
Yeah.
love them, because
Maybe we're all on a journey back
yeah, yeah,
on the long arc.
yeah,
Thank you very much, Martin,
great,
for sharing your story. Yeah, it's really meaningful, and it dovetails a lot with my own, and I'm sure with a lot of other people's experience at the
great.
moment. So I really appreciate your honesty and courage in sharing it.
Yeah, glad to share. It's been fun. Thank you.